Blog Talk Radio.
Are you ready? The champ is here! It's just a man! Give me a hell yeah! What the rock is cooking? To be the man, you have to be the man! Big Papa Pump! And you hooked up! Holla! In the air! Woo, woo, woo! Cup of coffee in the big day.
What? What am I supposed to do? I'm only here because I have to be here, okay?
Fern fell out.
I don't know. Oh, what happened? I thought the Apple was the fucking superior device, huh?
I don't know.
Anyways, folks, my name's Hunter Hearst Biden, a.k.a. Patty Rican. I'm a real American, and welcome to another edition of Working the Marks. I wasn't supposed to be here today, but I am because I'm contractually obligated to do so with Famcast Media, okay?
It's your day off, right?
It's my day off. But that's all right. It's okay. Because I'm such a man of the people, I'm obviously going to be here with you guys on Working the Marks. And it's great to be back for another episode of Working the Marks here with you. We're waiting for the professor to come in. But in the meantime, if anybody's got any questions, anything they want to throw up in here in the chat, we will be more than happy to answer it. Myself and Mr. Dee Rotten, our administrator.
Yes, sir. We're here.
Another man who's contractually obligated to Famcast Media to be here. So,
Yep, it's my day off.
you know, we're actually employees of, I believe his name is Vince McFamcast, and Vince McFamcast is making us work on a Sunday. Really overtime, double overtime, triple overtime in some cases. But how you been, D? How's everything going so far?
Everything's going good, man. I mean, I don't know what happened with Fern. He just had passed out. Like, oh, here we go.
Okay. Well, usually it's the audience that's passing out. There he is. It's usually your audience that's passing out because you put a sleeper hold on them, you bore them to death. But it's good. It's good for you to be here.
No. You know what? You must have me confused with some other journalists that put people to sleep, like David Cruz and those other clowns.
Oh yeah. Are you gonna pick a fight with Sean Morley, or should we leave that to some other, some other peon, if you will? I heard that if you pick a fight with Sean Morley, he Googles your past. So I don't know about that.
D, you appreciate this. I fucking Fios has just been garbage lately. So I remember I went on their Instagram and like aired a grievance because I like to air grievances. Bro,
Good way you get shit done.
Can you believe they blocked me on Instagram?
They blocked you?
Yeah.
You're a paying customer.
Fios blocked you. Verizon blocked you.
Yes, on Instagram.
Wow. Damn. So what's the count at now? You got Meltzer. You got Fios.
Cornette.
Who? Cornette too?
Cornette blocked me this year. Yeah.
Oh man, I thought you guys would be best of buddies, but
Word up.
Cornette, 2 people at CNN.
2 people at CNN.
Mark Lamont Hill. I think Pat knows who that is.
Vaguely, I don't know.
He's like a black professor at Columbia that's always on CNN. He's like one of those, people that, if you give him the wrong change or you don't put enough soap on the car wash, he'll think that you're racist.
What about
Oh
Obama?
shit, yo! You know what? That's a conversation for your other show. So. Yeah, it's great to have you with us, Fern. Obviously, we were talking about how we are obligated to be here contractually by our boss, Mr. Vince McFamcast, and he's making us work on a Sunday. But we, here on Working the Marks, we are men of the people. I know that the professor is contrary to popular belief, and I am. So we are here on a Sunday to bring you the absolute best wrestling content that we can. Okay? Fern, you can take it from here because I did not prepare.
Let me talk to you, folks. It's Sunday.
Jesus.
You know what that means. It's time for Working the Marks here via Famcast Media.
It's that T-shirt day.
That's right. Absolutely. He is New Jersey's premier wrestling analyst, the notorious, the glorious, the dubious
Doobie.
HHB Hunter Hearst Biden. And I am New Jersey's premier journalist and the most handsome journalist out there in New Jersey media. Not saying much because there's a lot of ugly mofos out there.
What about John Highness, though? I heard John Highness is pretty handsome.
Again, just very few of us. Myself and Mr. Highness, the walking weapon. And folks want to join.
The walking weapon.
The walking weapon, that's right. And folks, I want to thank you all for joining us here on this Sunday, rainy Sunday. Sharing is caring. Click that share button. It takes 2 seconds. And let everybody know how much you enjoy working the marks on Famcast Media. Shout out to our great executive producer, Dee Rotten, who helps make this show possible. And again, I can't say that we could not get this show off the ground without the illustrious Dee Rotten here on Working the Mark. So, Hunter, a lot to talk about here. Something interesting, though, because we talked about off the air, but sort of on the wrestling news here, man. WrestleCon on their website officially announced that they're welcoming back Rick Steiner to their upcoming show in Detroit, following some transphobic remarks he had made at a previous event during WrestleMania weekend. He'll be at a convention in Detroit coming up in August, probably right around SummerSlam, since SummerSlam emanates from Ford Field coming up in a few Saturdays from now. Obviously, the news is kind of interesting, right, in the Mark community after what happened back in April in Los Angeles, which many in attendance saw him lobby transphobic insults at Impact Wrestling star Giselle Shaw, the significant other of Impact Wrestling president Scott D'Amore. Following the incident, WrestleCon apologized to Shaw for Steiner's transphobic behavior, suggesting that they were backing the Impact Wrestling star and cutting ties with Rick Steiner. As such, the decision to bring him back for next month's event has been receiving blowback, of course, not a surprise, on social media. However, the fans' convention owner Michael Bocchicchio has defended his decision to let Steiner attend the event. The statement can be found on the event's Twitter page, claiming that Steiner reached out to make amends after the incident. It's not Monday, but, Pat, if you show contrition and he's trying to make amends and he's trying to do it the right way, get over it, folks. I mean, how much longer you want to crucify a guy? I don't know.
Well, I know it's very hard with a lot of the things that have been going on for people socially and otherwise. I know that there's particularly a group of older people that are kind of set in their ways and don't really understand the way things have been going. But hey, man, I'm a believer in second chances. If Rick is, truly remorseful for what he did, give him another chance, man. At the end of the day, people make mistakes. People say things that they do regret. Maybe he had a chance to kind of reflect upon these things, maybe talk to his son, who has really come out and said that he does not agree with what his father said whatsoever. And, at the end of the day, money talks, man. And I'm pretty sure that Rick does not want to miss out on that convention money. He doesn't want to miss out on action figure money. And, at the end of the day, he's trying to do something different. He's trying to move in a different direction. And I think people should at least give him a chance for doing that. I know that there's a segment of the population that might not feel that way, and that's fine. They're entitled to feel that way. But at the end of the day, the people who organize these events feel that his apology is sufficient. I'm sure that at some point he will apologize to Giselle Shaw, as well as apologize to Scott D'Amore. And, hopefully we can all move on from this, because it's a little fucking tired. I'm a little tired of hearing about this kind of stuff.
I'm with you. Also, on the news clip as well, Bocchicchio wanted to say that Steiner has learned from the experience and that he believes in giving people second chances. However, the statement also claims that Steiner will be given a permanent ban if he demonstrates the same type of behavior at future events. As of this writing, Shaw has yet to comment on the matter. I think you said it perfectly, Pat. Listen, whatever Rick had to do, I'm sure that he went through all the channels. Like you said, SummerSlam weekend in Detroit at Ford Field. There's a lot of money to be made at these conventions, these meet and greets. Mm-hmm. More on meet and greets later, as you can see behind me there. I'll announce a big meet.
I can't see it. It looks a little small.
Yeah, well, in any event, interesting. We'll see what happens. And listen, there'll be blowback on Twitter, on social media, and on internet websites everywhere.
And here's the thing, Fern. At the end of the day, if some people don't agree with the decision, you don't have to go to his table. You don't have to get your lunch signed by him. You
Yeah,
can
that's right.
boycott by not even going to the event or not giving him your money directly.
Yeah.
So I
So
mean, at the end of the day, I think these people who organize these events, they've made their decision. They're the ones who choose to pay these talents to come and do this. He feels like it's sufficient enough. That's fine. Obviously, he's got the warning that if he does something like that again, he's out. He's banned for life. So, let's give Ricky a chance and let's see what happens.
yeah, absolutely. And obviously, for everyone that recalls back, 30 years ago at SummerSlam at the Palace in Auburn Hills, obviously, him and his brother defeated the Heavenly Bodies to retain the then WWF Tag Team Championships at SummerSlam '93. So, it's sort of a full circle moment to come back during SummerSlam weekend. Some other news.
Just
Hunter,
a quick note here. Gatorade, if you're watching, we could use some fucking money. If you want to throw us some fucking moolah here, Gatorade, thanks.
Absolutely.
And Plan B. If Plan B could sponsor us, that would be awesome too,
Yes.
as well as Evian.
Yes.
Any adult diapers for Uribe. We could use that sponsorship. Thank you. And D too, because D's pretty up there in age as well.
Yes.
I'll tell you. Other news here. Interesting, man. And we'll get to some of the shows over the weekend in a moment, but just some of the things here on the news feed. Orange Cassidy breaking the AEW record for consecutive title defenses last night.
What?
What a talent.
At the Calgary Saddle Dome in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. It was the seventh installment of All Elite Wrestling's Battle of the Belts special event that they like to put on TNT. And the event started off with a bang with Orange Cassidy defending the coveted International Heavyweight Championship against Lance Archer. Good to see Jake out there. Good to see him mobile, healthy. Thank the Lord. Big Jake the Snake fan. And for people that were curious, obviously Lance Archer spent the better part of the last 3 months wrestling all over the world in the UK and Japan collectively. And Cassidy had entered the contest with a record time, Jesus Christ, 25 consecutive successful title defenses.
Wow.
And obviously he was able to defeat Lance Archer last night. You know what's interesting, though, man, and we've talked about it off the air. He serves a purpose for that audience. I think he's a guy that is, he's honed his craft on the independent scene. He's now the international champion on arguably the most glorified indie promotion in North America. It's not a gimmick for me. I know there's some significance and some history behind it, pop culture-wise, about why that gimmick is popular and where it stems from. I got to tell you, though, man, it's not my brand of vodka. That audience likes it. Certain people like it at meet and greets. I guess he's moving merch, but not a guy that, to me, I look forward to. And listen, Tony Khan's going to die on that hill. He keeps opening shows with Orange Cassidy, not just on Dynamite, but now on Collision too. And on Battle of the Belts. He has yet to appear on Collision. But again, man, not for me, but I understand the role he serves for that audience. And, sink or swim, he's a guy that apparently gets the metrics, gets clicks and views more than a lot of people in that locker room. And Tony Khan sees that. So, hey, he's going with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a quick shout out to all the people that are tweeting us here. These wonderful comments from Triple H, Too Cold Scorpio, who, by the way, thinks you're handsome. Carlito, who knows cool, says that we are cool. We appreciate the views, guys. Thank you so much. Obviously, Orange Cassidy is a guy that you either love him or you hate him, but at the end of the day, the guy can go in the ring. He's got numbers to back him up. And, he's a guy that works for that audience, man. I mean, he's a modern gimmick, but I think kids like him, marks like him, casuals could get into it. It's entertaining, and at the end of the day, the guy can go in the ring. But Tony Khan seems to be going with him. And look, man, he's a guy that's very dependable in those positions. I wasn't always a fan, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
But over time, I learned to appreciate what he did. And, I think the guy is just fantastic now. Now, some people might wonder, okay, when's this thing going to end? Is it the time to end it? It might be sometime soon. Lance Archer might be the guy to do it if they do a rematch somewhere down the line. We don't know. But as of now, I just think that Orange Cassidy's doing a great job. And to me, he's one of the very, very few bright points in
Yeah, I mean, again, we'll see what happens with him in this title reign. Obviously, it's broken an AEW record.
I just want to see a real battle of the belts. Like I want to see people take their belts off and like hit each other with it. You know, like that would be kind of cool. Then we would really have a battle of the belts. You know.
That's right. And folks, if you're just joining us right now here, hey, sharing is caring. Click that share button and let everyone know how much you're enjoying working the marks here on this, the 16th of July in 2023. Hunter, other news here from over the weekend. Triple Mania 31 took place in Tijuana, Mexico. God help us. But we want to sit through that is beyond me. But the main event did see Kenny Omega and Don Callis apparently continued their feud, as Don Callis was in attendance to witness Vikingo.
Isn't he dead?
El hijo del vikingo, or is it Is it the father? El padre del vikingo? Is it el vikingo? El hijo del vikingo? El sobrino del vikingo?
Hijo del Vikingo, yes. Okay. And apparently Vikingo was able to defeat Kenny Omega last night at the main event of Triple Mania 31. Now again, it's interesting at the post-show press conference, Callis' protege, Kazuka Takeshita, attacked the AEW star to continue their rivalry, obviously leading up to Blood and Guts this Wednesday at the TD Garden in Boston. More on that a little bit later, folks. And one fan apparently saw it as an opportunity to attack the heel manager. Now, this is what
really actually wasn't a fan, Fern. I just want to say that it was actually it was found out later on that it was not a fan. It was in fact a photographer.
Okay.
Who did not know that it was a work. And was not aware of what was happening. He legitimately thought that this was somebody else that was attacking Kenny Omega. So he proceeded to put Callis in the chokehold.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, that's why Hunter's good at what he does here with scoops and clarity on the show. This is what's interesting, though, Hunter. The way it's written, the incident doesn't appear to be a work either. Brian Alvarez of the Wrestling Observer newsletter was present when it went down, and he detailed the events afterwards. This was really funny, the way they word this. The journalist claimed that the attack took place while security was breaking up the exchange between Takeshita and Omega, and the attacker legitimately hurt Callis. The idea that anyone calls Brian Alvarez a journalist, it's like, what's next? Like, I have a full head of hair? I mean, Jesus Christ, Hunter.
I mean, for better or worse, the guy is a journalist. I mean, and I know that they hand that out to just anybody nowadays. But, you know, obviously he's a guy that's been covering wrestling, even though some of us might not be fans of it. You know, him and Sean Ross Fulisep, you know, some of these other guys, you know, say what you will about them. They are journalists, so for better or worse.
Yeah. According to the report, Callis' neck and ankle were both injured. Again, to your point, what's accurate about it, we don't know. He was subsequently rushed to a hospital in San Diego. Well, thankfully, I mean, you're not going to send him to a hospital in Tijuana for urgent medical attention. Which
no, really you get a tequila IV there, you know.
Probably, and it's only a couple miles, really. So, like getting to San Diego isn't really laborious from that location. So, interesting though that, hey man, this stuff still happens.
Yeah,
in the world of pro wrestling.
Look, at the end of the day, I think it's fantastic, and it's obviously proof that the work is still going. The only thing is that, you know, you know, this is where I think the bigger companies kind of have the difference. And obviously, we're all going to be looking forward to what Conan and Disco are going to be saying about it, being that Conan is the head booker of AAA. But I mean, generally speaking, you know, they kind of had a conversation with the media people and let them know, hey, X, Y, and Z is going to happen here. Or, you know, this is a work. This is obviously not anything like that. I mean, I get where the photographer is coming from. He's trying to protect one of the boys. He didn't know that it was a blindside attack for a gimmick that's going to be happening on Wednesday. Maybe they don't get AEW in Mexico. You know, I might move to Mexico then if that's the case. But I just think that, you know, they didn't smarten him up. And, you know, he did what he felt like he had to do. And, you know, it's an unfortunate incident. Hopefully Callis is okay. But regardless, I think that this is something that really, really, really adds to the matchup that's coming on Wednesday. The Blood and Nuts, whatever the hell it's called. Guts and Blood, whatever you want to call it. War Games, whatever you want to call it, right? That match going on in that horrible city of Boston.
That's right. More on that in a moment, but let's get to some highlights from the weekend here, some of the good shows. Another solid SmackDown, bro. Obviously, a fatal four-way to determine the number one contender for Austin's Theory and his coveted United States Championship, which will probably be defended at SummerSlam, most likely if you're looking at the time frame. Obviously, it's about maybe 2 weeks or so away, 2-3 weeks. Again, shout out to Nick Khan, because apparently it was reported that he's one of the biggest reasons, if not the sole reason, to convince Vince McMahon back, going to last year, about making PLEs on Saturdays. I think there's a lot of great dynamics there. Certainly allows kids to watch it with their families. You can go to watch parties, whether it be Manhattan or have them in your house. Again, a great PLE coming up in Detroit at Ford Field in a couple Saturdays. We did see Santos Escobar, who I think is very underrated, great worker. I think he's everything that Andrade El Idolo could be. It's just that Santos just cuts a better promo. Presently,
his command of the English language, I think, is a little bit better than Andrade's. That's
and
the biggest factor.
Santos is definitely, I think, farther along in that capacity, but he's a good worker. I've liked him since his indie days and his NXT days. Mm-hmm. He'll be facing the winner of this week's coming Fatal 4, which again, folks, LA Knight will be in the Fatal 4. Let's hope he wins it.
Fernando found that shirt in the trash, by the way, folks.
Hey, folks, it's selling. Maybe not NWO Austin 316 DX selling.
Well, I'm selling the fact that it sucks. So,
well, I mean, he's, Hunter's not a fan of LA Knight, but again, a good SmackDown. Another great pop for LA Knight when he came out to cut a promo. I think it's funny because we talked about this off the air. It's like whether it was at the Garden, right, during the pre-show, WWE was smart to take a lot of those clips, sort of compact them into something that's downloadable and then obviously upload it to YouTube and all the social media. It's funny, people like Cornette, Disco, and Conan this past week were talking about like, hey, how viral that segment with LA Knight and Hit Row was at Madison Square Garden 2 Fridays ago for that SmackDown. And I think maybe little by little, Hunter is like, okay, well, that's the pop he got during the pre-show. Let's see what happens when he just comes out and cuts a promo. And to the best of my knowledge, bro, solid cheering. He's over. I'd like to see him, again, we talked about this on previous shows, like, Austin Theory is getting a little flat. And I think that taking the U.S. Championship off of him at SummerSlam, again, I prefer to be LA Knight, but I think taking it off of him with one of these guys would not be the worst decision in the world, because I think it's been a little flat lately for Austin Theory. Great worker, young kid, good body, good look, good heel work on the microphone. Again, he checks up a lot of boxes. I would not, again, I think putting the belt on LA Knight at SummerSlam would not be the worst thing in the world, Pat.
Well, I think the only belt that he deserves is the ones on his pants. Now, here's my question, okay? Is it going to be Santos Escobar taking on the winner of the 4-way, and then they determine the number one contender, or is it going to be a triple threat match for the U.S. title at SummerSlam?
No. Santos will face the winner of this Friday's Fatal 4-way. They face off on the next SmackDown the following Friday.
The winner of that.
That's the number one contender. Now, again, for all we know, it could be one of those ruses, right, where they take a double pin, double something. Maybe it could be a triple threat match. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I like Santos. I think he's embraced that LWO gimmick well. I think it's been a good shot in the arm for him because, let's be honest, Fantasma, that faction was getting a little stale. I think doing the LWO with him and Ray and Selena Vega was not the worst decision. I think it's great. Obviously, it's great for merch, but I think it gave him a real good shot in the arm, almost like a B12 vitamin shot, essentially. And I think he's making the most of it.
Yeah, definitely. I really like what the E's been doing with LA Knight, having him come out and cut promos.
See what the pop is. Pop is.
Not even so much the pop, because you know what the pop is, okay?
Yeah, but analyze. Yeah, but Pat, it's also about Hunter and everybody else is in Gorilla and they're in the building. Like nobody's gonna have a better understanding than them. So
yeah, no, I mean, look, dude, I can go out there and cut promos like The Rock and Steve Austin too and get a huge pop. Doesn't really mean anything. You can go out there and do somebody else's greatest hits. But I like the fact that they understand that for better or worse, he's over with the crowd, right? And they're building that anticipation for him to wrestle. Now, I know that there was a lot of people, oh, you know, why you're keeping him up, Madison Square Garden, crying online and all the usual bullshit, right? And you saw the numbers that segment generated, right? And you had him come out on the show, cut a promo, crowd was into it, right? So now you're building up that anticipation for this upcoming Friday when they face off. Very, very, very well done. You got to milk it as much as you can. My concern with LA Knight is that he can kind of go the way of Elias. He can kind of go the way of some of the other characters that were over that kind of fell by the wayside. But this is different, obviously, because he's doing the Steve Austin Rocky thing, and that's obviously getting over with the marks. But we'll see what happens. I mean, either way, I think the matchup at SummerSlam is going to be really good. I'd like to see Theory retain at SummerSlam and then kind of drag this feud out. Well, yeah, because you want to drag the feud out, Fernando, because you don't want to have just one fucking match, just to have one fucking match. You want to extend this and you want to build that pop-up, and more importantly, the marks will complain even more online. They'll tune in even more, and the cycle continues. So they obviously know what they're doing, but I'd like to see Theory retain, maybe, grab a hunk of tights or put his feet on the rope, some underhanded way to win so that once you have that rematch, and you have LA Knight go over, it'll be really, really good and the fans will stay with it. You want to extend this as much as possible, man. You don't want this guy to be a flash in the pan. You really don't. You really don't.
No,
regardless of how I feel or not, if I was looking at this objectively as a booker, that's how I would feel. You want to extend this as much as you can. And remember, you build up this vitriol online from the marks. You already know that they're just going to tune in even more. You know what I'm saying?
Well, Pat, it's interesting you bring up Elias because I'm with you, and I think that there was a period of time between 2017 to 2018, into 2019, where that gimmick was over. I think obviously there was a lot of crowd interaction. Clearly I'm as someone that doesn't play an instrument per se, you're the musician here. But, it was a unique gimmick where he legitimately plays the role well. He plays the guitar, can sing, obviously. I just think that with Elias, and I started going back and looking at some stuff on YouTube.
I like Ezekiel more. I'm more of an Ezekiel guy. His brother was really, really talented,
Well, this is the thing about Elias. I think the bad luck about that gimmick was also, when and where, if at all, was there a moment to put a belt on him? The IC title or the US title. I think that there were a lot of programs going on during that time. I think it's easy, I think, for a lot of fans to sort of go back and we talk about this all the time, right? Like, well, over the years they've dropped the ball with X, Y, and Z. Like, we don't have enough fingers and toes on both our hands and feet, Pat, that people will complain, oh, they dropped the ball with this guy or that girl. We know all that. I just think when you go back and Google it and you look at the circumstances around that time with Elias, I think he didn't really fit in anywhere in a title picture. I think those title programs or those rivalries were that's what was really preeminent. And I think it was just hard to stick Elias somewhere and say, oh, well, you know what, we're going to put the IC or US title on him, because I just think it didn't work at that moment because you had other guys above him on the card that were drawing, if not more than him. And I just think it was I just think it's a victim of bad luck and circumstance. It's not like some conspiracy. Oh, Vince didn't push him enough or Vince didn't put the belt on him because at the time, I just think, again, if you go back and look at 2017, 2018, 2019, he didn't really fit in anywhere. And again, he was on TV, but he didn't fit anywhere in the sense of a program. Am I making sense?
That's one way of looking at it. I'm of the belief that you could put a title on anybody at any time if you really want to.
Sure.
It all just depends what's happening with them. They could have inserted him into one of those programs, but then there's that other school of thought where it's like, well, does he need a title? Because the guy's over already. So if somebody's over, do they necessarily need a title? Roddy Piper was a guy that could have been a champion. He could have been a guy that could have been the world champion anywhere. But Roddy was so good with his character work and everything that he was doing that he didn't need the title. So it could have been, I think one of those cases with Elias, or it could have just been like, hey man, we got this other thing that's going on. I mean, I think there are three reasonable views when looking at this talent. But again, my concern with LA Knight is just the desire for fans to see him. The want is there, man. The need is there, and you don't want to rush it. You don't want to rush it. You want to extend this as much as you can, and you want to kind of, make this work for you, because, from 1 second to the next, he could probably just go downhill. We don't know. You know what I'm saying? The other thing too is, his age. There's other factors too. You got to take into consideration. Maybe he's not healthy. Maybe he's got a knock somewhere. He's going to kind of try and work it off. Maybe that's why they kept him off TV. I don't think so. I think he might have been a little banged up from the ladder match, but I think that what they're doing is they're using his strongest asset, which is his talking. Right? His talking is his strength. He's good in the ring, but talking is really his thing. And you want to milk that as much as possible. And especially the fact that the guy, I believe, is already in his 40s. Yeah. So, you want to try and do as much as you can with him while you can. It'll be interesting to see how Paul handles this stuff.
Yeah, again, this Friday, he'll be in the Fatal 4-Way, and we'll find out. We'll find out exactly if he advances to face Santos Escobar at the following SmackDown. And again, listen, I'm not going to hide my fandom. I hope he wins, and let's see what happens if indeed he does face Austin Theory at SummerSlam. It's a big building. That pop could be crazy. In a building of 75,000 people, that could be an insane pop. We'll find out. We'll see in the coming weeks. Obviously, moving on during the weekend, great promo by Jey Uso. So, this is what's interesting. Again, obviously taking Jimmy off of TV for maybe a couple weeks. Don't know if he was in attendance last night as his wife, Fatu, aka Trinity in Impact Wrestling, who last night won and defeated Jersey's own Deonna Purrazzo last night in Ontario, Canada, to win the coveted Impact Women's World Championship. So who knows? Maybe he was in attendance there. We don't know. But in any event, Jey Uso's front and center. He's cutting those promos. Hell of a segment with him and his younger brother, Solo Sikoa. I think one of the funniest dynamics of the whole segment, man, other than the great mic work, was just Paul Heyman taking that super kick, man. He took it like a champ.
Yeah, a lot of people can say whatever they want to say about Heyman, but when Heyman takes a move, he takes a move. When Heyman takes a bump, he's going to take a real good bump. And yeah, I thought the segment was fantastic. The crowd interaction was there. The Usos, man, I mean, I know a lot of people talk about, certain tag teams being the best tag team in the world, man. The Usos they're not even in this world. They're in another universe. They're the Guardians of the Galaxy. You know what I'm saying? Like they're just somewhere else. And, his facial expressions, the way he knows how to interact with the crowd. I mean, you can't teach that kind of stuff. And, I just think that every week we're seeing another layer and people are just still with it. I mean, this is just not getting cold at all. And I know that there's a small vocal portion of the audience online that feels that, Cody should have won the title, or they could have done this, or Roman doesn't need the title to do all this. Well, you're wrong. Roman needs the title to do all this. Everything that has happened thus far has been great. And, for all the people that want long-term storytelling, I don't think that there's a better long-term story in the business right now, and possibly even all time, than this bloodline.
No, I'm with you. And I think that, again, another solid SmackDown. It's interesting, though, Pat, because what we're hearing, and we've seen some stuff written online, obviously, with re-upping the not advertising, but I guess the sponsorship. Well, actually, that's not even the right word. But the syndication, obviously, with Fox. We'll see what happens, as another country is coming up soon. Special programming note this Friday coming up, SmackDown will be moved to FS1 because the Women's World Cup and all 35 people that will watch it on Friday, that'll be airing on Fox. So, again, check your cable listings, obviously, to find FS1.
I think more people watch the Women's World Cup than Impact.
Maybe, yeah, I'm sure, yeah.
No, not maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Let's go Team Canada or whoever else.
Why not Team USA? I thought you were a Patriot.
Yeah, I'm just tired of those ladies. They're insufferable. I don't care.
They're insufferable. Why? I never thought I'd hear you say a lady's insufferable.
I don't care to see a three-peat. That's not really. It doesn't really interest me. But
no,
not at all.
You'd never, not even with your 75 fucking basketball teams, you wouldn't want to see a three-peat. I mean, come on.
Not at all. I saw my Lakers do that in the early 2000s.
Oh, they were your Lakers then? I thought you were still like a Knicks fan back then.
I don't recall. I'd have to go back and look at my.
It's a little blurry, right?
Yeah, it's a little blurry. But again, the idea that SmackDown could be moved to 3 hours wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, though, because it's funny, man. It's great television. And for all the shit that people give Raw, it's 3 hours, they should cut it back. No, it's never going to go back to 2 hours. It's staying 3 hours. I think now I will say this though. The reason I'm a fan of expanding to 3 hours though, Pat, is what they do is very similar to Raw, where they'll give you a lot of recaps, and that's important because if you didn't watch last week or didn't watch what happened on Raw, you kind of want that sequential, attention to continue. And I think that again, it was funny as I was watching it, and we're seeing the recap from the previous week, the Tribal Court. We're like, wow, I hope they don't go through all 40 minutes. But like, I think that's an example where the recaps are important, and it wouldn't be the worst thing if SmackDown moved to 3 hours. We don't know if Fox will be amenable to that, and then that means that Rampage would move to 11 o'clock on a Friday, and I don't know who would watch that from 11 to midnight on Friday.
Are you suggesting a return of the Friday Night Wars? Is that what you're saying?
I would suggest that it would not be the worst thing in the world to make SmackDown 3 hours. Again, great storytelling, great character work, great matches, great wrestling. I just don't know if Fox is amenable to that. We'll see, because I know that the negotiating window is open right now.
Right.
I'm sure Nick Khan is listening to offers from whether it's Amazon or other streaming platforms or maybe
it's my understanding that Fox is out. So,
okay.
Yeah, because they had their negotiation window with WWE and that already passed. So now WWE is kind of like a free agent. I would not be surprised if they end up on Prime. I would not. And I think that streaming is just desperate for live content, live sports content. And say what you will, pro wrestling, sports entertainment, whatever you want to call it, is live sports content. Which is why, you have Warner Brothers Discovery bending over backwards for AEW.
Prime already has a lot of sports content anyway. Again, not that it would conflict. I'm just saying that I don't know.
Yeah, but they don't have anything like WWE.
Well, true. I'm just thinking out loud, like either MLB, NHL. Yeah. They have those. They have those select games, but weekly programming. To your point about consistently weekly programming, I think that'll be interesting.
Well, I think globally, that's really the big one. You know what I'm saying? Because MLB, NHL, it's big in North America, but when you're talking about WWE, that's a global entity. So now, I don't know how it works with Prime internationally, but I mean, you would have more people subscribing to that to be able to watch SmackDown, and I think that would be really, really huge. So it's certainly something interesting for us to keep our eyes on.
No, it certainly is, and again, a good SmackDown. I'll skip over Rampage. Nothing really eventful per se, but last night's Collision was interesting, though, man. I know that you have your qualms, which we'll get to in a moment. Mm-hmm. The first hour, not a surprise. Literally every second of that full hour time limit was exhausted during the AEW World Tag Team title match. Best 2 out of 3 falls between the defending champions FTR against members of the Bullet Club Gold, Juice Robinson, Rock Hard Juice Robinson, and Switchblade Jay White. Again, bro, a good match. Not the best tag team match that people are talking about today. I think that's ludicrous. But a good match, I think, for what it was. A good match for the finals of the coveted Owen Hart Memorial Invitational Cup tournament between the ladies and the gentlemen last night. Willow Nightingale in a surprise defeating Ruby Soho, once again, back-to-back losses in tournament finals. And then Ricky Starks in a surprise, hooking the ropes to defeat CM Punk. The first pinfall loss of CM Punk, I think, in quite some time on AEW television. Interesting 2 hours last night in Collision. I know you weren't a fan of the tag team title match. FTR did retain. A good match, though. Again, if you like wrestling, that's what you watched it for. I don't think you didn't watch it for promos or anything else. I think it was a decent tag team title match, bro.
Yeah, that shit was a snooze fest. I mean, there's only so many ways you could work a fucking headlock takeover, but hey, you know, for the people that are into that stuff, that's awesome. You know, it was a good match, I'm sure, for the people that like it, but for me, man, it just dragged on a little too fucking long, and they lost me after a while. I mean, I've watched enough wrestling in my life. You know, I've seen enough people trade fucking headlock takeovers. I really don't need to see any more. But, you know, obviously the narrative that's going to come out is, you know, this is the greatest tag team match. Oh, my God. You know, Brian Last was falling all over himself, and all these other people were falling all over themselves because they love old school wrestling and old fashioned wrestling.
Meltzer probably gave it 27 stars out of 5. I mean, I haven't seen the rating.
And that's great, and that's awesome. But, I mean, if 5 people watch the fucking match, what does it even matter? But, I mean, hey, for the 5 people that did watch it, I'm glad you enjoyed it. For me, I tuned in a couple separate times between that and the Yankee game, and it was still going on. I'm like, when is this going to end? But look, man, you know, the beauty about wrestling is there's different flavors for everybody, and that apparently is a flavor for some people. It's not for me. I think that shit was boring as fuck. I've watched enough wrestling in my life. You know, whatever, but obviously, you know, the narrative's going to come out that it's the best wrestling in the world and blah, 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 and all this other shit. It's interesting.
5-star.
Yeah. I don't know how many stars FTR is up to now, but, you know, they'll put themselves over. I know they won with the hold that Owen taught his brother Brett in Canada.
Quick thing, Pat. One of the trophies in the AEW game is a 5-star match from Meltzer.
Oh, all right.
Are you fucking kidding me? Really? That's in the video game?
That's in the game, bro. 5-star match.
Wow.
But he doesn't work for them. He doesn't work for them.
But aside from like that crazy flip you see in the commercial, which I laugh every time, by the way, when you watch the commercial for the game.
The game sucks.
Like that flipping from the top of the ladder, like that's fucking hysterical to me. But
so the game really sucks, D.
I mean, if you like the N64 shit, you'll love it. I don't. I like 2K.
I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the old school N64 games.
You'll love this game then.
But those games were kind of for that time.
But D though,
you know.
But D, is it user friendly? Because my biggest gripe with 2K is I literally have to have my iPad next to me.
It's too user friendly.
Okay, no. The reason I'm asking is because when I'm
like Apple.
I don't know if you guys do this, but like I literally have my iPad next to me with the PDF file open so I can look at the entire list of movies because it's that long. That's how detailed that PDF is.
Well, this one is for like 5 to 10. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's got some serious jabroni graphics, though. I'll tell you that much.
So it's basically like SmackDown. Here Comes the Pain, like 1999, 2000.
Yes,
that was a great game, but I mean, but not for 2023.
No.
Yeah, no, man. I mean, I saw some of the renderings of some of the players. Eddie Kingston looked like the late great Tom Sizemore. It just wasn't very, very, very complimentary.
And they spent millions. I mean, they spent tens of millions of dollars.
I played it once and put it away because I'm just like, you know what? It's a keeper because it's the first, but I'm not playing it again.
Wow.
Oh my God. And mind you, this is a guy who sat through the Zack Snyder movies, okay? And Joss Whedon and all that other stuff, okay? So if he's willing to love that and he doesn't like this game, that's telling you something, folks. But I getting back to Collision real quick here. I really dug the fact that they decided not to be predictable. They decided to give Willow the win. They decided to give Ricky the win. And obviously, based on the way the previous episode had ended at the end, you kind of saw them have that stare down with each other. And you kind of had a feeling that somewhere down the line, one of them was going to turn heel. And Ricky, I think, is probably the best choice. So it should be interesting to see, how that rivalry kind of develops. And, good on Punk for working with the younger guys, trying to elevate them and do their thing. But, at least it wasn't predictable. I'll say that much.
Pat, what do you make of again, it's hard to read in Calgary, a big Mart town. I think I lost count how many Bret Hart references Nigel McGuinness was making during the match.
Yeah.
Like reference Bret Hart a lot. I was like, oh my god.
Especially when it's a tournament about Owen Hart. That's the funny part.
Yeah, I know exactly, and it's interesting because the reception when he entered the arena to go to the ring was a little polarizing. Kind of reminded me, I think, early on when we first started seeing people being very divided about Cena. Cheers, boos, and it seemed like there was a moment when like Punk was like almost like encouraging the crowd with the boos the way Cena does when he hears Cena sucks.
Sure.
Interesting though that that audience, they have their fandom, they have their loyalty to the Elite, to
Right.
Kenny Omega, to the Young Bucks, to Hangman to some extent. It's interesting though if this is going to be, I guess, a trend moving forward for Punk when he enters buildings.
Well, I think you nailed it. That audience, they're big fans of the Elite, and they feel like CM Punk kind of took a shit in their cereal, and he caused a lot of problems. I believe that there was even a what was the sign that you said that you saw in the crowd that it said?
Crying man-child Phil.
Crying man-child Phil. Okay. So, I mean, that right there kind of tells you that there's a portion of the audience that do not like him. And again, these are people who were big fans of the Elite. Their hardcore audience is not going to like him because those are their guys, and he went against their guys. And I think in their eyes, CM Punk to them is still a WWE guy. And we already know that WWE is, bad and all that other stuff. CM Punk's going to have his fans no matter what that are going to cheer him on. But I just think that, that polarizing response is certainly due to the fact that he has heat with the Elite. And I personally hope that at some point they capitalize on that and they try to do some kind of business with it. But I mean, the clock's been ticking for a while.
Well,
I think
Pat,
if they do that, it's going to be a little stale.
Well, Pat, what do you think again? And we'll get into Blood and Guts in a moment, just to preview what's coming up this Wednesday. But what are you hearing about the reports, whether or not they're legit or credible or not? That apparently, as they were trying to figure out who the fifth guys were going to be. That Punk had pitched the idea to Tony Khan about being the fifth guy on the BBC team against the Elite in the upcoming Blood and Guts match. And apparently, allegedly Moxley was fine with it, but supposedly Matt and Nick Jackson were staunchly opposed to it. I don't know if it's credible or not. How the March, some of these rumors just take on a life of their own online.
I mean, I'm going to take it with a grain of salt personally until I see proof otherwise. But, it's a good way, again, for them to spark the interest, for them to possibly fill up a house because people do want to see that encounter. They do want to see that interaction. So again, I take it with a grain of salt for now because you can't really trust it. Plus, we know that a lot of the people that report that stuff in the AEW camp aren't the most reliable. And look, this isn't us hating on anybody. I mean, this is us going by the track record. A lot of the times, unless it's a story that everybody is getting, most of these guys like SRS, Brian Alvarez, Meltzer, get a lot of misinformation as far as these things go. And they also like to create a lot of problems backstage. I think it's fairly obvious that there are a portion of people within AEW, whether they're office or some of the boys or girls, that don't want Punk there. They just don't. And there are people that do want Punk there. And then there's people that just don't give a rat's ass and they want to go about their business.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if the guy's going to get you ratings, he's going to sell tickets, he's going to sell gimmicks, and he's going to keep the lights on, you got to run with it. So Tony Khan obviously sees something there and sees something in him. What happens between now and All In remains to be seen. But I do hope that at some point, somewhere down the line, this encounter happens because I feel like it could be something good for AEW and for wrestling fans.
Yeah, and to your point about selling merch, I mean, obviously the Comforter T-shirts are selling on WrestlingTees.com. Certainly, whatever metrics. Now, again, and we'll get more to the metrics later, per se. But congratulations to Ricky Starks, obviously, and Willow Nightingale, the 2023 recipients and winners of the Owen Hart Memorial Cup Invitational Tournament. Obviously, to benefit the Owen Hart Foundation. Again, Dr. Martha Hart, overseeing that organization and trying to keep Owen's memory alive. Kind of interesting, though, another dynamic last night, man. David Benoit, the son of the late Chris Benoit was in attendance, literally in the front row there in Calgary. No mention of him, no reference to him directly by name. But CM Punk made a point to go up to him and hug him after his loss to Ricky Starks. Obviously, I think the commentators were very careful to just make a reference to, well, CM Punk's interacting with the fans, and that's about it. But if you saw it, obviously right from the beginning of Collision, you saw Dax Harwood walking by David Benoit. And listen, folks, the striker.
Did he kiss him like he kissed one of the members of the audience?
I don't know, but but the striking resemblance to his father, I think, is undeniable. You see it, you can't miss it when you watch it on TV. Interesting, whoever bought that ticket for him, and got him a front row seat. I mean, who knows? Maybe he did it himself, or maybe somebody from the office was able to do that. But interesting though that that went without reference last night, though, Pat. Not surprising.
No, not entirely surprising at all. I'm pretty sure that was a comp. I'm pretty sure that they invited him there, being that they're in Canada. I mean,
Calgary specifically, because I believe he does live near Calgary. Yeah.
I think. Well, I think his family's from Edmonton.
Yes,
and that's also in Alberta as well. But I mean, it's interesting with AEW. Some people might say they're entering their PG phase. And I don't know if we got more on that in the news. But, I just think that I feel for the kid. I really, 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 really feel for the kid. And it kind of threw me off a couple of times seeing that face in the crowd, because I was like, what the hell? Like, that's Chris Benoit. And then I realized, no, it's his son. But I feel for the kid, man. I really, really do. It's got to be so difficult to have to bear that burden, to carry that, and to know that everybody feels a certain way about your father. And, I think at the end of the day, he's not culpable in any of that. He's a victim just as much as Nancy and Daniel unfortunately were. And I think that the kid deserves a fair shake, I think, from everybody. And it's good to see that AEW and WWE invite him to events. But yeah, AEW kind of had to be a little careful, I think, with mentioning him on TV. And I'm pretty sure that, Warner Brothers Discovery was kind of just like, yeah, nah, because I don't think that they want to touch that either. So,
especially, listen, we learned during the Briscoe Brothers days that certainly comments made by one of the Briscoe brothers some years ago that we know how Time Warner Discovery addressed that issue and really kept them off TV for the better part of their time in Ring of Honor up until the untimely and tragic death of Mark Briscoe some months ago.
Jay Briscoe.
Jay Briscoe. Excuse me. Well, it's interesting. Obviously, talking about who's banned from being mentioned on AEW television. Let's talk about what's being actually banned on AEW television. Pat, this week, a new report from Fightful Select highlighted a document that was sent out to the talent in the locker room, outlining a list of moves that are either banned and or require approval from the office. Now, the banned moves list includes unpredictable chair shots to the head, strikes to the back of the head, blind moves backward turnbuckle like the buckle bomb, spitting, sounding like one is having a seizure. Wrestlers are also prohibited from physical contact with the crowd, including taking food or drinks from the fans in attendance, which wouldn't be a bad thing with some of the obesity there in the audience, but that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But weapons and projectiles in the crowd are now a no-no, as well as bleeding in the audience. Now, the list of moves that require approval from the office is much broader and includes things like, again, bumps on the ring apron or outside the ring, any spot with tables, ladders, and chairs.
Oh my!
All variations of pile drivers, hurricanranas, and sit-down drivers.
What are we in the Disney friggin' show now? What's going on here?
Using weapons and throwing objects, choking with hands or weapons, high-risk dives and top rope moves, bleeding on purpose, injury spots, any spots or brawling in the crowd, any spots involving non-wrestlers like referees and manager. Again, just to be clear, these are the list of moves that require approval, not necessarily banned.
What about a super kick party?
Yeah, like the aforementioned. Hunter, you're the worker here. Your thoughts on this memo that circulated around the locker room for the office at All Elite Wrestling?
Well, it's about damn time. And, I think that, this has been a long time coming. I mean, they've been trying to prevent a lot of injuries for a long time, a lot of unnecessary injuries. And I think that AEW has been prone to a lot of that. Especially with the young talent, this is really what you want to do. You don't want to put these decisions in their hands because obviously they're going to do what they're going to do to try and get over. And in their mind, they feel that getting over is doing a Canadian destroyer off the ladder through 7 tables. Ultimately, that's going to cut your career short. I don't think that's going to do anything else for you. What I'm curious about is how this list applies to certain main event talents. Might they have a little bit more leeway to do certain things? That remains to be seen. But I think that this is the best thing that they can do. And this is also a sign that they are entering their very own PG era. Warner Brothers Discovery, there's talk about them giving them another show. There's talks about them possibly putting them on Max. This was inevitable. One way or another, if they were going to become a truly serious company, it was inevitable. So the fact that they choose not to do any more of this Wild West stuff, I think, is going to be ultimately beneficial to their product and hopefully the longevity of their product and hopefully the longevity of the talent. So we'll see what happens, you could think whatever you want, Dave, but, why don't you go out there and try and do that stuff? That's what I tell everybody. If you think that this is lame, go and drop yourself on your head 7 times in a row, okay? And then tell me how you feel afterwards. If you're not puking all over the place or dead, So good for AEW for them doing this. Good for them for having some semblance of structure and safety. Yeah. And again, you're protecting the talent from themselves. And I think that's the most important. Well, that you could have a 5-star match without doing that. And I think more importantly, you can grow your audience significantly by doing stuff like this. So good for AEW for doing this.
And also too, I think what's interesting is, and again, the latter list that I provided for our audience, again, it's a list of moves that requires approval. I think we all know that there are certain talent in the back that, that really embody, again, whether it's bleeding on purpose. I don't know what John Moxley might do, but
that one popped me when you said that, and that's who immediately I thought of.
I was like, and the idea that some of this arsenal has become sort of like the bread and butter for a lot of talent. Now, is that, to your point, is that going to require them to have to maybe change their style? We'll see. And I'm fairly certain that, like anything, if certain guys can politic their way, though, Pat, because some of this is, symptomatic of who they are and their work style. We'll see. We'll see what's tailored. We'll see what's modified, and maybe they'll have to calm it down a little bit.
I just got this in. From Meltzer.
Uh-oh.
John Moxley is going to do a cupcake out of the oven match. That's his next one.
Maybe. But I think it's interesting, though. And again, Pat, to your point about not just this week's announcement about this list, but also the potential where Time Warner Discovery is receptive to having AEW produce more pay-per-views, even so much as 1 per month, kind of resembling the old WCW model, which they first came up with in 1995. Excuse me, I'm sorry, no, my bad. Look at my notes here. I think it was 1990.
Do it.
No, it was 1995. Excuse me. Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting because with all the names that they have for some of these like special themed dynamites, right? Winter is Coming, St. Patrick's Day Slam, Beach Bash, New Year's Slam, Fight for the Fallen, Fighter Fest.
You just say Twitter Fest?
Fighter Fest, yeah, Fighter Fest. It's interesting because I don't know if they don't move it, to your point, to a streaming service, the idea that they think it's realistic to expect their fan base to pay $50 a month for a pay-per-view, I think is stretching it. I think if you go the way of either moving to a platform, whether it's subscription-based, again, if we're going to, listen, back in February of 2014, when Vince announced the WWE Network for $9.99, that was a godsend for a lot of us, because whether we were doing it online, right? Because we were way past the digital descramblers. We were basically watching pay-per-views on those sort of black market pirated websites. And those are hard to watch sometimes, because of the pop-ups and everything else. So I think when we look back to 2014, the WWE Network was a good investment, $10 a month. You could see the pay-per-view at the time and look at all the catalog. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if Tony Khan explored this with Time Warner Discovery, because if you're going to be moving to a pay-per-view a month, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world either.
No, I don't either. I think he has to go the way of the times, or he's going to go the way of the dodo bird. It's truly up to him to decide this. And I think if you're going to go monthly pay-per-view, you got to understand, man, that even though these marks go over there and they spend all this money to eat their boogers and to watch this type of wrestling, you still want to draw more people. And more importantly, think about this. Let's say you're a Max subscriber and you don't really watch wrestling, but you're curious about it. You tune in and you check it out. It might be for you. It might not be. But either way, it's kind of pumping up the numbers a little bit. So I think ultimately for AEW's long-term survival, I think it's a really, really good move, especially if they switch over to the monthly pay-per-view thing. But we'll see. We'll see what happens between now and then.
Absolutely. And again, because what comes to mind, though, man, is, and again, there's no announcement as of yet, but at the end of August, when we have All In emanating from Wembley Stadium, and how many people go, again, remains to be seen. We'll be dissecting that in the coming weeks.
45,000 max. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Now, again, that's Sunday, August 27th. The following Sunday is All Out from Chicago, and that's Labor Day weekend. So basically what Tony Khan is going to be asking fans is to pay $50 for 2 consecutive Sundays to watch AEW. Again, I got to tell you, I don't know who thought that was a good idea. I understand the notion of All In, but if you were going to do that, then again, I understand that All Out is like their staple.
Fernando, Professor.
Yes.
2002's Booker of the Year said that's a good idea. Get it right.
Well, again, man, I'm just from a cost-cutting perspective, I'm just thinking like I would hope that maybe there's some package deal or something. Hey, if you order both, you get it for like, I don't know, $40 or something. The idea that to ask a lot of these wrestling fans to put down $100 over 2 weekends, again, and they might have to budget their OnlyFans subscriptions and who
you get a free FTR T-shirt with every subscription.
Oh yeah, I mean they're gonna have to alter their OnlyFans subscriptions and who they stalk online, porn stars or the girl down the block. I don't know. I think it's
from what I hear, lube is very expensive. Also the fleshlights too. That's a couple of fleshlights you're not going to be able to buy. So I mean, he's putting his base in a very tough position.
Right.
As I do the Dave Meltzer with the microphone right now.
Yeah,
because Fernando loves it. It's super over with Fernando.
5-star pose right there, bro.
Well, I mean, we're talking about buying fleshlights. I mean, and some of these fleshlights, they belong to porn stars. I mean, they're stars. So I'm gonna give this conversation 5 stars. Okay.
There you go. So it'll be interesting though, man, because when we think about what we've become preconditioned, let's be honest, going back to the mid to late 90s. Right, when WCW started the trend and then Vince continued, right? Because it kind of forced Vince, if you remember, to start in your house, right? And it was interesting about how that became a staple every month, whether it was in your house or the traditional 4 pay-per-views that we grew up with, right? And then the other ones as well. It'll be interesting to see, though, what he will do if that's indeed the case, whether it becomes a monthly thing and what it does creatively, because essentially what you're doing, though, man, is you're forcing the storylines on Dynamite, Rampage, and Collision collectively to have to kind of like mesh at some point as it leads into a pay-per-view. And let's be honest, they keep plugging. They plugged it last night. Coming up in late August, early September, AEW is going to be in Chicago Wednesday at the Now Arena for Dynamite, a live Dynamite. Friday for a live Rampage at the Now Arena. The next night, Saturday, they're live at the United Center. And the next night, Sunday, they're live at the United Center again. We're all out. I don't know, man. That's a lot of money to have people spend. And that's a lot of, theoretically, making these fans pay for something that, quite frankly, they could space out more. But that's me.
I think that's fair. I'm pretty sure that they have some sort of ticket packages available for all these shows, for all these Chicago-based shows, which seems to be the home at AEW. But it all depends how Tony does it. It all depends whether the storylines become a little bit better, whether people become as invested in these storylines as they are with WWE storylines. And I think, this move list that we talked about, these banned move lists, as well as, these monthly pay-per-views, I think it's a good way for Tony to kind of weed out the crap, focus on the big stories, and try and hook people to come in. So we'll see what happens, but we kind of tend to know the case when it comes to what Tony should do and what Tony does. So we'll see.
Absolutely. So again, it'll be interesting to see, though, what happens with these sort of, I guess, business decisions by Time Warner Discovery, whether or not they'll push Tony to do this, or also even moving to a streaming platform, because I think that becomes a much better cost-cutting measure. I would say for a company like AEW that needs its fandom, that needs its base to stay loyal to them, and without, putting people in a really precarious position financially, to say the least. Let's move on to our main event topic here this week, Hunter. I got to tell you, man, since the premiere, though, a few weeks back, when where it drew 816,000, there has been a consistent regression for Collision. Recent numbers had it as low as, I believe, in the 400,000s. We don't know exactly what last night's number did. Obviously, a Battle of the Belts subsequently right after Collision. We'll see if that did anything to them. I know that, I was home to watch Collision for a little bit, and then I went out for my Saturday night. I did look up the results and watch some stuff on YouTube today about Battle of the Belts, per se. It just seems, though, man, that this show is predicated, I think, more on wrestling. It's a show that they're obviously having Punk headline every episode, essentially. And whether or not this is intentional, that this is going to be Punk's baby and he's going to be like the premier name on that show and he's going to carry it as a brand or whatever. Obviously, not everybody wrestles on Collision lately, but some guys that have been off TV benefit from going on Collision, such as Andrade El Idolo, who returned recently, Miro, the House of Black, for example. Bro, I just look at this as it's early to say. I mean, obviously next Saturday night, they'll be in our backyard in Newark at the Prudential Center, the home of our New Jersey Devils. We will see what the turnout will be on that Saturday. Obviously, there are other things going on. Premier League teams are visiting MetLife Stadium early in the afternoon, so we'll see. Looking at what the card will be coming up. But, man, I just got to tell you, I look at Saturday Night Wrestling, and, again, I'm certainly going to date myself here and show my age. But, there was a time when watching wrestling on Saturday early evenings was something that was desirable and that there was an audience for that. But this is way before the internet, way before, not syndication per se, but before cable TV really exploded, before streaming platforms of any kind, before social media again. And I just don't know if there's that interest where, to use a quote you've said to me plenty of times off the air, wrestling may not just be enough for this show to survive. And the numbers show that. Yeah, the opening episode with the theme music and Punk debuting, returning, obviously, a strong showing for a Saturday night show for them. But, I mean, we're talking about numbers dipping down as low as the 400,000s. And there's a lot of stuff to watch, man. There's the baseball. Listen, the pennant races are heating up. I mean, not in New York, obviously, but, I mean, around the country.
Not yet.
Yeah, okay, sure. You have, obviously, the latter part of the USFL. Also, you have Major League Soccer with their games being broadcasted. There's a lot of stuff to watch on Saturday nights, or just having a social life and going out. And I think that, putting a show at 8 o'clock on a Saturday, I'm going to watch it because I'm ironing or showering as I'm getting ready to go out on a Saturday. But I don't know if just wrestling and promoting the subsequent weeks, Dynamites and Rampage, is going to be enough for this show to survive, man. Again, we'll see this Saturday. Bro, Newark, this area is as market town as there is in the continental United States. So we'll see what they do this Saturday in terms of attendance. But it's not the late 90s or even early 2000s anymore, man. It's hard to keep people's attention span on something with wrestling. And if there was a market for it, I'm sure WWE would have explored it. Now, one thing is a PLE. That's one thing, which is once a month. But the idea of a consistent wrestling show every Saturday and expecting it to do well, WWE, I'm sure, is a different dynamic because they would do well ratings-wise. But it's still a tall order, man, to ask people to tune in regularly to pro wrestling on a Saturday. I think it's a hard sell for a lot of us, and the numbers are showing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, no matter what you do, no matter where you go, AEW has been in a position for quite some time now where they have to hotshot all their best stuff. They can no longer sit around and wait. And if you really want to grow your audience and you really want to get more people to come and tune in, that's what you need to do. The last we checked, as far as it goes with Collision, we had seen some numbers, and I'm taking a little gander here on WrestleTix, but it's my understanding that the tickets that were allocated at the Prudential Center are somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5,000 tickets. 5,000 tickets. I mean, that's not a good sign. It's certainly not a good sign that you're growing your audience. It's not a good sign that this is, a show that people really want to see. And I don't know if you're trying to look at it either right now. Okay, here we go. So the information for Collision next Saturday, the 22nd, the available tickets, the current setup is 5,905. The tickets distributed is 5,016. There's about 889 tickets left. No surprise, there's a pretty healthy mark audience over here. But the fact that you're allocating almost 6,000 tickets in a building that holds way more, not a good sign in my opinion. And definitely indicative of the fact that it's a niche program. I get it. I understand that there's people who like this kind of stuff, that like just pro wrestling, but it's still not enough for the amount of money that Tony Khan is spending on talent and on everything else. And I just think it's the same old with them, man. I mean, they continue to not do what's going to grow the audience, what's going to pique interest. They always, let's play the long game. Let's just wait. We're getting to the story. But the problem is that, you're losing out on growing your audience and getting more people to come and check this product out. I mean, look, I'm a fan of death metal. I love death metal, but I also understand the fact that death metal ain't going to sell out Madison Square Garden. And if it does, it'll probably be a long, long time from now. You know what I'm saying? When maybe the perception of that has changed and it's no longer a niche product. So I just think that AEW has to try and do what they need to do to grow this show, to make this show more interesting. And I think a lot of that is centered around, episodic storytelling, soap opera style storytelling, because that's what clearly works for WWE. And if AEW wants to continue to expand, and if AEW wants to really see some growth outside of what they're doing, which apparently is okay for Warner Brothers Discovery, they're going to have to engage more of their audience with episodic storytelling.
Well, Pat, to your point, though, and I know you're not a fan of it specifically, but it seems like they've been trying to do the last couple of weeks with MJF and Adam Cole. Obviously, they're still feuding, but at the same time, they've also been forced to pair up during the blind eliminator tournament to establish a number one contender for the AEW World Tag Team Championships. Obviously, this Wednesday at Blood and Guts, they will be in the finals of that tournament. In the last couple of weeks, again, I know you haven't liked it, but I would say, and we talked about it out there, I said, you know what? Good for them for at least trying to do some character work. Obviously, the segment at the gym I thought was kind of funny because we all know that, MJF is outside the gym and Adam Cole's like, hey, Max, what are you doing? I've been in here for an hour doing my cardio, and we're all like laughing. And I remember like on my wrestling chat, we're all like laughing, LOL, with that. And obviously we saw Adam Cole deadlift, 500 pounds. Well, we saw MJF at least maybe try to do that. I don't know. But Adam Cole, doing the weightlifting. And then the following week, they're at a bar. And MJF obviously is the scoundrel because he's single and he sees a bunch of girls. Adam Cole being the devoted boyfriend, obviously on during the segment. Oh, I'm good. I care about Britt. I mean, it's that sort of character work, attempt at comedy to then, transition to playing video games. Yeah, you're plugging the video game and they're doing all that. We'll see what happens, obviously, this Wednesday as they're in the finals of the tournament against Daniel Garcia and Sammy Guevara to see who will become the number one contenders. I know you're not a fan of it, though. It kind of takes us back to the old Lethal Lottery days, in Battle Bowl, per se, where you're just kind of having these random pairings, which kind of made that novelty match a little interesting in the early to mid-90s for WCW. We'll see what happens. Obviously, I would hope no one's buying a shirt, better than you, baby, because that might just last for a cup of coffee at this point. But I know you're not a fan of it, but at least it's a little refreshing, though, Pat, to see a little character work.
I mean, hey, man, they're trying. I personally don't think that it's cool to poke fun at Cole's physique when this is a guy who's supposed to be a world title contender. You're basically saying that, hey, it's okay that this guy's undersized, and you're kind of basically telling your audience that this is bullshit. That, this title chase and this contender is bullshit. And I don't think that that's the kind of message that you really want to send to your audience. The attempt at character work, I think, is okay. It's good for what they're doing, right? It's good for the people that like it. But again, too little, too late, man. I mean, this is shit that they should have done a long time ago. Even with Cole and with MJF, I'm just not sure that that's going to be enough to draw the interest of a casual viewer. And I know some people say that casual viewers are non-existent, but I would think that people who kind of fell off with wrestling after the Attitude Era, after Ruthless Aggression, they're kind of considered more casual. I would consider myself a casual viewer because I'm not watching, wrestling all the time. I watch the major shows and that's about it, or AEW in their case, I don't particularly watch Dynamite. I, tend to watch maybe Collision a little bit more just to see how that kind of goes because it does seem like it is a better program. But look, man, I mean, I guess something is better than nothing.
Sure.
But again, a little too late. And I just think that if they wanna really grow their audience, if they really want to do what they need to do to get people interested, they kind of have to start hot-shotting their big stuff and insert that character work into their big angles. Insert the character work into Comforter versus the Elite. I think by inserting that into there, you're accentuating something that already has heat and interest because we all saw that Punk's rant, that brawl out scrum, that generated a lot of interest for them online.
Yeah.
But I think by doing that, and giving that to Comforter and giving it to the Elite, you're going to generate more interest for their audience. So we'll see. And I'll tell you this much, FTR could use the character work, man. They need that. I mean, obviously the guys are fantastic in the ring, but they're fucking boring. I'm with you. And they're unoriginal too. And obviously AEW is going to do a lot of stuff to try and be like WCW because I guess that's what they kind of consider themselves. But add this character work where it's needed. MJF as champion has been kind of flat. It has been.
Yeah, it has, Right.
And I just think that, again, I feel like I'm a fucking broken record here, but they need to inject the character work into their big programs that they hotshot that generate interest. If they could at least find one program that they could do that with to spike those numbers, then we're talking, But
no, definitely.
We'll see.
it's interesting. And to your point about maybe trying to be the modern day version of WCW, we're going to see that right this Wednesday, emanating from the TD Garden in Boston, downtown Boston. Very well. It's a 2-hour Dynamite, but obviously the main event. Well, let's sort of go with the undercard first. Hook and Jungle Boy Jack Perry will finally face off after weeks of Jungle Boy Jack Perry eluding Hook. They'll be battling out for the FTW Championship. As I mentioned before, the finals of the Blind Eliminator Tournament for a future AEW World Tag Team Championship match. Certainly the main event, Blood and Guts, I guess a reenactment or an homage to the original War Games back from the mid-'80s that debuted during the NWA days, which would then embody WCW. This past week, though, man, the Blackpool Combat Club announced their partner, where Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, Wheeler Yuta, Kazoku Takeshita would team up with Pac, along with Don Callis, and they'll be facing now the Golden Elite, which consists of Kenny Omega, Hangman Adam Page, Matt and Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks, and Kota Ibushi in that Blood and Guts match. And then subsequently, man, for Rampage later on Friday, obviously it's taped right after Dynamite, they'll have the 20-man Royal Rampage Battle Royal. They'll have the 2 rings in there. And for better, really for all intents and purposes, it's essentially a Battle Bowl where it'll be 20 guys, 10 guys in one ring, 10 guys in the other. They'll all do their best to eliminate each other from each ring. The last 2 remaining guys will go at it, and whoever's eliminated will receive a future AEW World Title match. So, listen, if there's an homage to WCW, it's this Wednesday night coming up on TNT. On TBS, and then on TNT.
So let me ask you a question. When Pac comes to New Jersey, is he the NJ Pac? Or is he just NJ Pac? Like, I was just curious about that.
I don't know. I'm not sure if he'll be at Collision this Saturday. Who knows? But
if he is by chance, he would be NJ Pac.
It would be. Kind of interesting though, man. The choice of partners. I know that created a little bit of a buzz in the Twitterverse and social media verse for wrestling fans.
For marks, I mean, nobody really knows who Kota Ibushi is,
True.
Unless you're a hardcore wrestling mark.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
I mean, look, the guy's tremendously talented, no doubt about it. But I mean, like, the interest isn't there, man. The interest is not there from casual people, man. And for them to go that way, when they also have tons and tons and tons of contracted talent already that the American viewing public would already know, it's another indictment on Tony and what he does, man. But, I mean, look, I understand the position they were in. They didn't want to pass up signing Ibushi. He's obviously got a history with Kenny.
Who?
He's got a history with a lot of the guys in the Elite and some of the other talent on the roster. Their core audience obviously knows who he is.
Who?
But, I mean, if you're trying to grow this product, not the best guy that you could have picked. And again,
speak English?
I don't know. I mean, he obviously speaks enough English to understand money and contracts. So, and at the end of the day, that's the English you need to know. I mean, Fernando should be outraged because it's another immigrant coming over here and taking our jobs. But
yes, I swear to God, I can't.
Well, what? It's another job that Americans don't want to do or they're too lazy to do. So they got to go and bring in an immigrant to do it, because they got the work ethic. But it's just. I mean, even the hype for this, I got to be honest, I'm just not into it. I'm not into it. I have no interest in this whatsoever.
Well, Pat, this feud has fallen flat for, I think, very different reasons. I think that the way they've done it, and it almost reminds me about what made the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle feud, I think, flat as well. In the sense of, like, one faction jumps the other, annihilates them, and you would hope that they'd be off television for a while. Yeah, eventually they get their revenge, and that happens within, storytelling and everything else. But what happened with that? In a week, the Inner Circle was back, and they were jumping the Pinnacle. It didn't make sense. Like, to drag this out, well, at the time. And it just seems like I hope that this is a conclusion to the BCC and the Elite. I think this rivalry's been pretty flat. It'll be interesting to see if and there's only been 2 incarnations of Blood and Guts. Both times the heels have won, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but what I think is interesting about the premise of Blood and Guts is I think it gives that nostalgia fix to this audience. It's a very niche audience. I think for those of us that grew up watching the old War Games matches in the NWA and WCW, obviously a very low roof to the cage. Everyone remembers back in 1990 that unfortunate powerbomb that Sid Vicious laid into with the late great Brian Pillman. That looks scary, obviously, because again there was basically very little, if no room between the roof of the cage and the ring. So when you picked up somebody in the air and tried to powerbomb, that's what ended up happening. That's not the case, obviously, here with this incarnation of the structure. It's basically Hell in a Cell in 2 rings. So it's a significant roof. Same rules as what we grew up watching with the old War Games matches in NWA and WCW. But I think that this rivalry's been flat. I don't think that this match saves this rivalry. I'm hoping it ends on Wednesday night because it's been flat as far as I'm concerned.
I think the only thing that can save this rivalry has nothing to do with the rivalry. And I think that would be Comforter showing up and costing the Elite the match. If you get Comforter over there, Comforter, CMFTR, if you get Comforter to show up, I think that that you could pique some interest there. But I don't know if that's going to happen just yet because I think maybe things might be a little salty. And more importantly, I think Punk is kind of in the middle of his feud with Ricky Starks. So, we'll see what happens there. I'm pretty sure that the Elite's going to go over in this because they want to set them up strong. And they kind of want to put the Elite in a position where eventually...
Aren't they always strong?
Well...
When have they ever been weak?
Sometimes they do jobs. Sometimes they do jobs. But I just think that if you want to try and build towards them and Comforter facing each other at All In, you got to have them go over, let everything kind of play out on TV, and then once August comes, you want to start building it up. I mean, it's crazy because there's not even one match announced for this show.
Who's got the heavyweight title?
Malcolm.
Malcolm?
Yeah, Malcolm Silverberg. He's got the title.
And Claudio.
What about for Collision?
And Claudio is also the reigning and defending Ring of Honor champion as well. D.
Without and they don't have a show.
That show's on Thursdays at 7:00 on Fight TV. So
I thought that was Rampage or the other one, Dynamite Destruction.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't know, Dave, because they don't do a great job of advertising it. So that's the big difference.
Well, they got do they have a show every day of the week?
No, they have a show on Thursdays at 7:00.
Okay.
And then Impact is on at 8:00 on Access TV, and then New Japan does their show at 10:00 on Access TV. In case you
Bro, that's too much, man. And I'm a Mark. It's too much.
I'm a Mark too, and I watch it, but I don't watch Ring of Honor. I don't have the time for it. But I do watch Impact religiously. So.
I mean, obviously, I don't think anybody knows about it because they do such a great job of advertising it. Yeah, so, that's why nobody's fucking aware. But,
who's the Collision champion?
There's a Collision champion now?
I don't know. So you're telling me that MJF is the champion for Collision, Dynamite, and Rampage?
He is the champion of the company, I think, across the board.
Yeah, it's not a brand split. Like, it's not like no. Collision's just the third show.
Okay.
Under Time Warner Discovery. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was raised under the school of Vince.
Yeah, but Pat. Yeah, I mean, again, I think to your point, it's going to be interesting to see how Collision can do this moving forward with it's the more wrestling centric show. It's not as many segments per se, obviously, as what they're trying to do with other shows. I just think that, listen, it's not time to pull the panic button yet, but with a show like you mentioned, like All In coming up in Wembley in probably 6 weeks, the idea that not one single match has been announced yet.
Did you get your free tickets?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I did not. But it's interesting to see what's going to happen this Wednesday on Dynamite with Blood and Guts. If it starts setting up for All In, maybe for All Out, and whatever other show comes up in the foreseeable future.
Wait, there's an All In and an All Out?
Yes.
Oh my God.
My question is, are they gonna have that DMX song? Y'all gonna make me go all out up in here. You know, like is that gonna be the song for All Out or what? Because I mean, you got
Maybe.
Saturday Nights All Right for Fighting. Tony's not above paying a bunch of money to get theme songs. So
True.
you know, we'll see. But again, man, I just think, you know, before we beat this segment to death, you know, I just think that at the end of the day, Tony Khan really needs to hotshot his big programs, get that interest, inject the character work in the big programs, and maybe then the product might be a little bit more watchable to people that initially were turned off to it, other than just their hardcore audience.
Definitely. Before we call it a night here, folks, a couple of interesting programming notes. Dynamite will be in Boston this coming Wednesday, but the following Wednesday, Dynamite will be in Albany. And folks, again, for all of you that are fans like me, you can see it right behind me at the Heroes Hideout comic book store in Albany at 131 Colony Center. Again, you can call them at 518-928-6262. You see it behind me, folks. Adam Cole, baby.
Hey.
We'll be having a meet and greet on Tuesday at 6 p.m. at the Heroes Hideout Pyramids. Again, for all you collectible and figurine fans and comic book fans, it's a great store. All right. And you get to meet Adam Cole, $50 for a photo op with Adam Cole, baby. I'll be there, folks. I'll be there cheering on Adam Cole. Obviously, as Dynamite comes to Albany, New York in 2 weeks, the day before again at the Heroes Hideout. In-store appearance, folks. AEW superstar Adam Cole at 6 p.m. Once again, the Colony Center, located at 131 Colony Center, Albany, New York. For more information, folks, check out www.heroeshideoutshop.com. Get your tickets today to go meet Adam Cole in Albany on Tuesday night, July the 25th. I had to just plug that shamelessly on the show, folks. And I know Pat is about to have an aneurysm right now, so you'll have to excuse him. I think Pat's about to pass out right now from being in
I'm
tears.
about to pass out from laughter. I mean, yeah, it's such a huge event that he has to advertise it on this show. You know, so many people are going to be there, you know.
That's right. But before we call it a night here, on this day in pro wrestling history, folks, on this day, July the 16th in 1988, in one of the more notorious incidents in pro wrestling history, international star Bruiser Brody was stabbed to death after a wrestling show in Bayamon, Puerto Rico. Spoiler alert, breaking news, someone getting stabbed in Puerto Rico. Although never proven, though, it was thought that the stabbing was carried out by Jose Huertas Gonzalez, who wrestled under the name Invader Number 1. Brody, whose real name was Frank Goodish, was stabbed twice in the stomach and died the next day in the hospital from excessive blood loss. You know, shitty job by Carlos Colon, not knowing what's going on in his company. And if we all saw Dark Side of the Ring, I think we could all kind of connect the dots as to
Dark Side of the Ring. Is that what you said?
Yeah, liability-wise, tragic day, folks, in pro wrestling history.
Fernando's just mad because the only Colombian that'll ever end up in the WWE Hall of Fame or just in the Wrestling Hall of Fame is cocaine because it fueled a lot of the 1980s. So
that's right. Yeah,
there you go.
You know, again, a sign of the times. You have to travel to territories and wrestle in different organizations around the globe. Obviously, Bruiser Brody going to Bayamon, Puerto Rico. I couldn't find that fucking place on a map if you asked me to, but yeah. That was one of those unfortunate incidents.
You actually could find it on a map if you actually look at the map and you read it.
Probably, but
it's pretty easy to find. I mean, duh.
Also, on this day in 1990, folks, on the 27th edition of Saturday Night's Main Event, which was taped at the Omaha Civic Center in Omaha, Nebraska, all three titles were up for grabs and were retained on the show. In the opening bout, the Ultimate Warrior retained the WWF title via disqualification over Ravishing Rick Rude. Again, as they were building up their program for SummerSlam 1990 at Philadelphia at the Old Spectrum later this summer. Also, Demolition, Smash, and Crush defeated the Rockers, Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels, to keep their hold on the WWF Tag Team titles. And finally, Intercontinental Champion, the late, great Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, defeated Tito Santana.
Chico Santana.
That's right. Also on this day in 1995, WCW's Bash at the Beach took place on an actual beach in Huntington Beach, California, just a little north of Malibu in Southern California. In the main event, Hulk Hogan retained the WCW World Heavyweight title with a win over Big Van Vader in a steel cage right on the beach in the sand. And this was the first match in WCW history where the escape rule was used in a cage match. Also, in 2000, ECW's Heatwave 2000 took place at the Grand Olympic Auditorium in Los Angeles. Justin Credible defeated Tommy Dreamer in a Stairway to Hell match. The event is perhaps better remembered for the legitimate interruption of the show by a bunch of wrestlers from the XPW promotion who brought front row seats to the show. And also, unfortunately, on this day in pro wrestling history, in 2001, Terry Bam Bam Gordy, best remembered for being one of the members of the illustrious Fabulous Freebirds, died from a blood clot causing a heart attack at only the age of 40. Unfortunately, all this on this day in pro wrestling history, July the 16th. Pat, what we got going on to close out the show?
Nothing much, man. I hope not to be bothered again on a Sunday by Vince McFamcast to come on here. I will, however, fulfill my contractual obligations. And quite possibly the next show that I do, I might put my career on the line. But that remains to be seen. It's still up for discussion. Just want to send a big shout out to Carlos Alcaraz, the winner of the 2023 Gentleman Wimbledon Championship, the singles championship, defeating Novak Djokovic in 5 sets. Hell of a match. You jerk-offs fucking were bothering me while I was trying to watch it. I do not appreciate that one bit. McEnroe was there. He was calling it. And just like that cigarette in the background, it was a fantastic match. And big shout out to Carlos Alcaraz. And hopefully one of many majors in his young blossoming career.
Carlos Alcaraz.
The rest of you people could go eat shit under a bridge. I'm going to go enjoy the rest of my Sunday. Fernando, plug your political gimmick. Dee, thanks for stopping by. I'll be seeing you when you come by with that crate amp. And,
Sunday fun day.
Keep on keeping on, folks. Life's a garden. Dig it.
Dig it.
That's right. Right. Folks, he is New Jersey's premier wrestling analyst, Hunter Hearst Biden, a.k.a. the PBR superstar, the great Patrick Vincent Rivera on the show tonight. Folks, before we call it a night here, special programming note tomorrow, the latest edition of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe via Jersey First TV will come to you at 7 p.m. to interview State Assembly candidate out of the 31st Legislative District, which encompasses a new 31st Legislative District after redistricting, which consists of the south side of Jersey City, also the city of Bayonne, as well as the townships of Harrison and Kearney collectively. Angelique Marina Diaz will join me tomorrow night live at 7 p.m. to discuss her candidacy, and hopefully, perhaps she'll get to win a state assembly seat later on this November, as she will be taking on, obviously, her Democratic counterparts in the November general elections. So again, special programming note tomorrow night at 7 p.m. The latest edition of Real Talk comes to you live with State Assembly candidate Angelique Marina Diaz. You definitely want to check that out on StreamYard via Facebook Live, also on the Jersey First TV YouTube page, as well as on Twitter and also on LinkedIn. Folks, special programming note, obviously, the traffic continues very, very well for Real Talk. Over 11,000 all organic views in the month of June. Certainly nothing boosted because I didn't even get vaccinated for COVID, so much less do I even believe in boosting anything. But definitely very grateful to all my audience that tunes in every single Monday night for Real Talk. So check it out, folks. Also, check out all the great programming available on Jersey First TV via jerseyfirst.org/TV. Not just all my episodes are there live on Monday nights, but all the great programming that's brought to you by Jersey First TV, which includes new episodes of The Nader Narrative on Thursdays, hosted by Elizabeth Nader, and of course, Bridging the Gap with AJ Malilo and Stephen Rumbolo, also on Thursday nights as well. Folks, the dream team of New Jersey journalism, that's right, it's Jersey First TV. We're educating, we're enlightening, and we're also entertaining every week via jerseyfirst.org/TV. Folks, once again, thank you so much for tuning in here for a Sunday edition here of Working the Marks, a little late afternoon edition on this rainy Sunday. So, folks, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you next week here, folks. And always remember, if you can't be good, be bad, baby. We'll see you next week here on Working the Marks, brought to you by Fancast Media. Have a great Sunday, everybody.
Jamcast Media.